You're listening to In-Fisherman Storyline, North America's top voice in multi-species freshwater angling. Here is your host, Thomas Allen.
So last time we had the discussion about your early days, the trip to Hayward, the move to Brainerd, and I want to start where you talked about S&W Bait and Tackle and the League of Guides, because I kind of feel like that was
Nisswa Bait.
In Nisswa Bait and Tackle.
Nisswa.
Okay, so that was a connection you guys made when you got into town early.
Yep. And that led through the meeting and hook up with Marv Kep at Nisswa Bait and Tackle as he was starting to build that business in the Guides League. That was the infancy of the Nisswa Guides League, and we became a part of the Nisswa Guides League, and that led to the development of Lindy Tackle Company. Mm-hmm. And Lindy Tackle Company took up 7 years of my life. And the last 2 years of those 7 years, we got a taste of the real heavy taste of the media business. Mm-hmm. And we had sold the business already to Rayovac, and we had a 2-year work contract. And then I got a taste of television, and at that time, Fishing Facts magazine was really starting to develop into its own, and we started to write regularly for them. And we started doing, still doing a lot of seminars and sports shows. Mm-hmm. And in those days, you'd go to a sports show, a speaking engagement, and you had to turn them away at the doors. Mm-hmm. And the fire wardens would come in. The people were so starved for fishing information, mm-hmm. Starved.
And that was social media of the early days.
Of a sort, exactly. So all of this media stuff was happening. And I've said a number of times, when I seen and sniffed the taste of television, I said, I like this. Yeah. But in any case, we were in every form of media. The big there's radio, television, print, and that's where you were at. Mm-hmm. And, so.
But you had to have everything together, right? Because it was like a platform in those days. Still is. The more levels of media you have worked together, the better your reach, the more abundant the people that are going to see it, and naturally one promotes the other.
That's still the way the game is played. Mm-hmm. So that last 2 years being in the media business, after we had our 2-year contract, that both Ron and I, we talked to each other seriously. What are we going to do with our life? This thing, I really like this TV stuff. We love writing in the magazines and all of it. And you had people would constantly come up to us when you were finishing these seminars and in-store promotions and stuff and say, do you have anything like that in print, mm-hmm. a handout or something? And you hear it over and over and over, and pretty soon, ching, maybe, just maybe, I'm hearing something. So,
well, I mean, you're right. If people are having to schedule their visits to shows, and it's once a year that the crew would come through town, like they're getting a very limited opportunity to learn directly. Well, I mean, that totally paved the way, right, to them having something on a regular basis.
And again, the people were just starved for fishing information of any kind. There really wasn't anything at that level. Mm. We're still in the foundational level of basic fishing skills and the communication end of it, and the articles and everything. So that kind of lit the fire, to start In-Fisherman Communications Network. That was the seed that planted it.
So go back to your conversation with Ron about that. You guys were talking about what you were going to do, and kind of walk me through that discussion and where you guys both came to the point of, we got to do this.
Well, I was still fishing tournaments then, particularly through when we had Lindy Tackle Company. We were promoting our products there. The idea of In-Fisherman was a distant kind of thing, except for that last 2 years. Mm-hmm. We really started looking at what Fishing Facts was doing and how they were doing it. We seen Bassmaster taking shape with the magazine there. Mm-hmm. We seen some of the television fishing shows that were on there. One of the ones that really registered, Virgil Ward was up here doing a shoot. And he had a hard time catching walleyes. So he's in at Marv Kep's place talking to Marv, and Marv says, call Al. Yeah, he usually is on a good bite. Give him a call, and we'll see what happens. So he called me, and we went to South Long Lake, and we smoked them. We just smoked them, and he caught his on the bucktail jig, and I caught the other fish on a Lindy rig, dragging live bait in a Lindy rig. And we had a killer show. We were done in 4 hours. So we got out on the humps. Nobody's seen this. These fish never seen what we were even throwing on the humps out there.
What was the camera equipment like then?
A lot of that stuff was a step above the Scubic. The old Scubic was the best field shooting camera, but you had to do voiceover, and you had the rewinds, and you were clipping them. They were splitting apart on this thing. It was a real fiasco.
There was no dragging and dropping in Final Cut Pro. It was going to work.
No way, Jose. But that Scubic camera, it was those shooting in the field, they were like a workhorse. They just performed. No matter what you did with them, they worked. You pick them, you shake it a little bit, and it would work again. You're still shooting with film then, obviously.
Did you have like an out boat, a second boat, do the filming?
Once in a while we did. Yes, once in a while we did. And because you had to get some outboat shots. I would say probably, no, that's what once in a while, at least 50, 60% of the time. And it was a different kind of shooting. You had to be really precise on what you did. You actually caught the fish, then you'd go back into the studio and do voiceover and build transitions around it. It was the easiest way to do it. Instead of, you could go in the field, but you'd have had to have everything like Hollywood have had to do that at that time. So you had the handheld Scubic, go baby, and you got the job done. So the earlier days, I can still see that first show that we ever did that was up in the Park Rapids area on Big Sand Lake. And that lake still's got big walleyes. The thing we know now is they're all suspended. At that point, we caught them on a rig. We had some on
right. It's interesting to think that there were walleyes then that are the same fish as they are today. That they have no idea the passage of time. They're not aware of it, right? We've seen stuff come and go. Your experience is obviously quite a bit longer and more in depth than mine, but those fish have no idea.
No, I was talking yesterday. We were, like everybody, we were on the kick of forward-facing sonar again.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a day goes by that somebody doesn't say something to me or something about this stuff. I've never seen anything in this sport like this, but. They asked me, a little bit about what's your feeling of it. And I said, one thing that, there's a lot of things, and I won't go into all of them, but one thing that it really resonated to me after seeing it and using it for the past 4 years I believe it is a huge possibility that there's way more fish in our lakes than we ever realized there is. That's what came out there. These fish have always been there. By accident, we would stumble on some things now and then, and we knew there was some of these fish out here, but not to the magnitude of the population of fish. And like I said, to me, at this point in my life, I would like to know that I'm positive there's more fish in these lakes than we ever realized.
Yes. Well,
period.
An example for me is we talked about North Long in the last segment we did together.
Yeah.
That's like one of the greatest biomasses of bass in the region here. And there have been little portions of that lake that we found over the last few years where you can make cast after cast after cast after cast and catch 2 to 3 pounders till you're tired of it.
Till tired of it.
And they're not the same fish.
No.
And then you can go back the next day, do it over, and none of those fish have a hook mark in their mouth.
No.
So there's definitely more fish. I agree with that. I think there's more than we realize.
I got to give you a quick story on North Long.
Yeah.
Not that this happened. One of the most amazing experiences that gave me a check on something that how little we knew about fishing at the time. I was still guiding, and it was early fall. And I'm in a Merrifield end, and they're coming out of the big lake on the North Shore, that sharp drop, that sharp break.
Yep.
And it's just a great spot all the time, particularly in fall. There's a lot of fish that use this thing in fall. A lot of us believe there's kind of a migration from one lake to the Merrifield, but that's another story. I got a nice day. I got a guide party out there, and we're doing okay. We're doing okay. Not low enough. I'm finishing off the trip. We're fishing down that break line, and I got a guy from Kansas City. in a boat. And this was one of these guys that was he would change lures every 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes.
This isn't working out. What else do I got to do?
And so, that was you all know the guy. He just never say, "Oh, he's trying that." So help me God, he ties on a jitterbug. A jitterbug. Mm-hmm. He reverses. I'm casting through. He throws over the 30-foot break, the 30-foot flat in back of us in open water. He catches a bass. He commenced to catch 11 bass. 11 fish on a jitterbug over that 30-foot flat. And I fished it 50 times since then. Never had it happen again in there. What caused that phenomena? Mm-hmm. And that's one of those things when you spend a lot of time on the water, you see these light flash moments that resonate with you that you never forget. And it's part of putting together all these missing links over time. And pretty soon, they start to come in and make more sense, and this piece of the puzzle comes in here. But I'll never, ever forget that experience.
Well, the interesting thing is you know this well, that section of that lake is the same today as it was then as far as that fall time. For some reason, that little corner, both of those sides can be great for the best fish in the lake.
Yeah.
And listen, don't go out and fish our lake. We're not trying to promote the fishery so much.
Really. But it's a phenomenal body of water to see how when you have big numbers of fish on how they react and do different things.
So we are down this rabbit trail. I do have a question. What is your feeling in the correlation between having large bluegills in a lake and large bass in a lake? Do they seem like a lake that has both?
From my experience, yes.
Yes.
Hands down. There's no question. Absolutely no question about it.
Does it have something to do with the larger bass feeding on the bluegill fry?
It very well could.
Okay.
Yeah, I would not doubt it.
There definitely seems to be that correlation. If you see a big 9-inch bluegill, there's going to be some 4 and 5 pounders around
in that lake. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting.
That holds true, really true.
Write that down. Let's go back to the In-Fisherman origin discussion you had with Ron. Did you have a name picked out then, or was that kind of evolving?
It evolved. It evolved into In-Fisherman. Yeah, just the logo design and everything. That's what it became. Mm-hmm. And there at that time there was a very popular song out. You're part of the in crowd. Mm-hmm. And that was what seeded the idea of In-Fisherman, the part of the in crowd, and it worked well. We developed at an early stage, in the early development stages of In-Fisherman, the very really early stages of it, to put together a team of professional anglers, where you'd make it proud for them to wear the hat, and they became a part of it. And what had happened, you gathered some really good fishermen that.
Oh, I found the song.
That they shared input with you from different parts of the country and different things, and they wanted to share their information, and you were giving them a gathering point. A question of a person that I'll never forget is Rich Zaleski. Rich Zaleski is still alive. Mm-hmm. In a period of time, his writing for In-Fisherman was one of my absolute favorite writers. His style of writing at that time on bass fishing, finesse fishing, little baits, light line, leaps and bounds. He was already fishing Ned rigs, versions of Ned rigs, many, many years before Ned come up with a Ned rig. Yeah. Rich was he was all into heavy presentations of light line stuff, all finessey stuff. And the way his style of writing, it was still a great contributor. And many of the people that contributed over and are still contributing over the years are very skilled anglers.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the things that always fascinated me about In-Fisherman is that you knew that the folks contributing content were anglers.
Absolutely.
And scientists in their own right.
Yeah, absolutely. In their own right, the way you said that, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're fascinated not only in catching fish, but why the fish do what they do. Why didn't these fish, why was this day a bad day and 2 days ago on the same lake I had a good day? Then you start analyzing everything. They're analytically processing stuff all the time, and you accumulate so much knowledge and your brain is holding all this stuff. But time on the water, pretty soon it comes together. People will say, how can you look at the fish location, presentation, idea? How can you process this stuff? You've got to first train yourself to think that way.
Yes.
When you start to think that way, you start answering those questions.
Yes.
And pretty soon, before you put your boat in the water, you eliminated pretty much 80% of the lake, and you haven't even made a cast yet.
Yes.
And you get to that point. Your mind just, it just processes every. You look at the weather, you look at the color of the water at the boat dock, and all of this stuff is going boom. Yeah, they're not going to be here, they're not going to be here. So you just go through a quicker elimination of water to get on the best bite possible. And this is something you could learn to do. You learn it. You learn it. And nothing beats time on the water. But good information, good quality information that makes you think. And the best thing is you get challenged.
Yes.
You get challenged when you're with other good fishermen out there. They challenge you. And no better grounds to get challenged than a tournament, because it takes away every preconceived notion you ever had, baby.
That's right.
Every preconceived notion you had is gone.
So a cool example here, something that I've learned over the years, is you kind of go through phases as an angler. You really want to catch a fish when you go, and then that kind of moves into, I want to catch multiple species, or you maybe it's a limit of bass, right? You want to catch a limit or a muskie that's a certain length. Well, you kind of get to that point, then you're like, okay, now I want to understand why. And I remember when I was it would have been my first outdoor gig. I was working for the Iowa Sportsman magazine, and I was fishing a lot of tournaments. They had like a Tuesday night league and on a lake called Brushy Creek. Does that ring a bell?
Not for me, no.
Okay, it's a timber-filled lake near Fort Dodge. It's a beautiful place, and I was getting technique figured out and learning to catch fish, but I wasn't analyzing the catch. And I remember there was a point where I was getting tired of getting beat. I was giving money every Wednesday, Tuesday night to these guys, and I'm
contributing.
Like, yeah, right. I was a contributor, and I wanted to evaluate every bite that I got and try to correlate them together. It's establishing the pattern, right? Yeah. That's the next step. And I remember where I was on the lake. I have a lot of these moments, Al. They stick out in my mind. I remember the tree, whatever. Thunk fish. Okay, I better throw back in there, because I remember hearing somewhere that there's usually more fish together. Second cast, thunk, got another one. I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to put it together. And then there was the thing of, in bass fishing, and I'm sure walleyes are perhaps this way. I know, bluegills they're very competitive. If you have a fish pick up a plastic and it swims towards you, then you can assume there's more fish behind it he's trying to get away from. So when I started analyzing that stuff, it slowed me down, try to put together more of the pattern, right? Because patterns are the classic in-fisherman formula, which is F plus P plus L equals success.
FLP.
Yep. So all of that stuff started coming together, and then how do you take that same mindset lake to lake? So to your point, you want to do your best while you're out there, but if you're not being pushed by someone to force that, and there's nothing wrong if you want to sit on the front of your boat and fish to your own style.
That's your choice.
Yep. And if tournaments are not your thing, that's fantastic. It's a beautiful thing about fishing.
Absolutely.
But if you want to learn, go pay your money and get in the boat or fish against the best anglers in town or in the community or on the lake, and you will learn.
You will learn really fast, really, really fast. And like I said, every preconceived notion you ever had is blown away in the first tournament you're at. And then when you go out there and you think you know this lake and you think you had a fair bag of fish, and you come in and you're in 15th place out of here, and you thought you were in first. And these guys are all you hear Doc talk, and you hear how many fish they caught and culled, and you think, I think I might need to learn this a little bit more.
Or those times you're out there all day just hammering them, and you're like, man, I got a great limit of fish. This has been one of the best days. Like it for a long time, it took me to calm myself down. Like, okay, if you caught them, there's a really good chance that a lot of the other guys caught them better.
Yeah, for sure.
Gotta have to keep yourself humbled. Well,
sure.
So the tournament world, time on the water, inarguably a fantastic way to learn. But there's another great way to learn, and in those early days of Lindy and In-Fisherman, that became the written word from experts.
Correct.
And you had to find a way to aggregate those thoughts, to build personalities as the writers, as the TV show hosts. Your vision of In-Fisherman started as essentially a pamphlet, right, of material that grew. So talk about that first publication.
The first publication was 1975. That came out. We did a massive direct mail campaign to launch it. Mm-hmm. And what had helped, my brother Ron did a big favor for George Pazik at the time, who owned Fishing Facts magazine. He helped him in a big way. So George had an IOU to Ronald. And Ronald said, give me the mailing list for one mailing of what we're going to do. Let me use your mailing list. And he did. And it was a game changer. Because it was the kind of people you already wanted to reach. They were already avid anglers that wanted to learn how to catch more fish. They weren't satisfied with where they're at this point in time. Mm-hmm. You know, I want, and still till today, you know, there's always a better way to catch a fish. Yeah. There's a better way. As we sit here right now, we know so much. We're sharing so much knowledge. We see somebody out there already knows the next. They have the next right now. You're going to say, what's next? Somebody's got it. It's on your desk right now. Mm-hmm. It's in their mind. It's coming together. Somebody's got the next greatest bass lure we've ever seen. Somebody's got it, and you're going to see it soon. It's in play. It's there already.
The next game changer.
The next game changer and everything. As much as we know about fish movement and everything, and over all these years and everything, until forward-facing sonar came out and taught us a whole new level. And like I said, in my case, the revelation that, man, there's a lot more fish out here than we ever realized. Well,
and I think that looking at what we need to learn and finding a path forward to getting that's a long commitment. That's a long-term goal, right? And I mean, In-Fisherman was you had no end in sight when you started that. It was, how do we get information in front of people so that everybody can catch more fish, everybody can become more productive on the water? Because those moments that we talked about in the last episode that are so important to our development, we want to share that.
Yeah.
And that was the goal.
And you had to gather, there's pockets of good fishermen where they were already over. The people with that mindset were already in little pockets. They were in existence, but they had no vehicle to gather the information and share it. But In-Fisherman started to touch them just like bass touched the bass market in a competitive world of bass fishing. In-Fisherman was doing that in the multi-species network in the northern markets. Mm-hmm. You know, and the really good anglers all of a sudden started to gravitate to it. Mm-hmm. You know, they'd pick it up on a newsstand, they'd watch a television show, and pretty soon the best of the best of the best were there. You're always on the front end because they're always looking anyway. Mm-hmm. They're always looking. What can I do to get another bite? You know, how can I get a little bit better? They know that there is another something, and I want to be the first one on my lake with that something to experience that kamikaze bite for the next 2 to 3 years, and that's about the lifespan now. That the things happen so fast.
That's right.
If you could get 3 years with that new secret bait, then you're doing something.
Well, and I think everybody's racing to have that today as it was back then. But talk a little bit about the response. So you sent out your first mailer that Ron managed to get a hold of this mailing list.
Yeah.
How did you find out that was successul?
By the checks coming through the mail.
Oh, yeah. So you were committed then at that point to produce another one.
We were in hock up to our eyeballs when we made that mailing.
Mm-hmm. What was the offer? What were people paying for, and how much was it?
I have the direct mail piece here.
Okay.
That you could probably put a camera on and show it.
We'll get a picture of it. Yep.
People later on, and you'll get a kick out of looking at it and seeing what we were talking about at that point. You know, at that point in time. But that direct mail campaign, well, after it went out, like I said, we were in debt up to our eyeballs. We knew nothing about doing a magazine other than we just had a dream. of doing it. And so, I mean, our cash flow was nil. There was no care. Everything was hinging on this thing working to some degree. Boy, did it work.
Yes.
And I don't remember the exact amount of money that we had that we got in a 60-day window of time, but it was, at that time, $150,000 in checks piled in envelopes on a desk. Then I looked at Ron and I said, "We can head to Canada and disappear."
Gonna buy an island. On Lake of the Woods.
I mean, we had a pile of money.
Well,
I says, now we got to really make this thing happen. We got to get the job done and give them what we said we were going to give them, which is something they never seen before in print. And the foundation of the whole thing from the very beginning was based on a fish location presentation. That was based on. Then it grew to understanding the bodies of water, the environment, the lake, the river, reservoirs, the different stages these systems are in, and the kind of species are in these systems at these stages, what you can expect. And the biggest challenge in the fish location presentation aspect, in its simplicity, the fish you're fishing for, its basic nature, how it functions in the environment that it lives in, what's the best bait for me to use or lure for this situation to catch the most fish. I've just simplified everything, but that's when you put them all together, because it's impossible to have a good day on the water without those three things happening, whether you realize it or not. If you stop and look at it, all three of those worked. If you got two of them, you got a fair day on the water. Yeah, they have to, for a good day on the water, all three of them have to happen, whether you know it or not. It happened. It has to be that way. Yeah. So
did you have that established before you sent this first one out? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And the very no, it was right in the transition. Actually, it was just now in process. We're just processing this stuff. At that time. I shared earlier, I was fishing tournaments, and I was fishing BASS, BCA Basscasters Association, that was out of Mattoon, Illinois. And they were trying to do what Bass did, and they had tournaments up north, but no, not the level of what Bass did. And there was another organization called American Bass that I fished, and they were out of Florida, and their tournaments were Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. So at some point, I was fishing all three tours.
Oh boy, you were on the road a lot.
Yeah, a lot. And naturally, I befriended Bobby Murray on the bass side of the thing. We roomed together. Bobby Murray, for those of you that don't, he won the first Bassmaster Classic ever. In fact, I talked to Bobby 2 weeks ago. We keep in touch, 2-3 times a year. He's telling me about the hot. He's killing them on spots. He says, "You want to do a television show, Al?" I'm the. That's another subject.
On spotted bass.
On spots, yeah.
Oh, I love those things.
Yeah. So we talk a couple times a year and get caught up on stuff. But his understanding, him and Billy Murray, helped us do the in-depth piece on reservoirs, on how we qualified the different highland, flatland, land, the different levels of the different stages of reservoir, canyon reservoirs, how to classify a reservoir to understand it. And that took an amazing amount of work.
Oh, I'm sure.
The lakes and the rivers were pretty easy. The classification of reservoir, and they had helped immensely. I don't know how many hours we sat on that stuff and send stuff back and forth.
Well, and I would have to think that that's a part of the eliminating water process for the anglers that live there. If they recognize the type of reservoir that they lived on,
Bingo.
Then they knew where to start.
Bingo.
Or had a place to start.
Yeah. And Bobby and Billy at that stage, they were the kind of angler we were talking about earlier. They were into education. That was what there was. Billy started a thing called Bass Fishing Institute, was the forerunner to all these bass type gatherings these days. The Bass Fishing Institute was done in Indianapolis at a school out of there, and they had all the best anglers in the country come and do these things.
Sure.
And that went on for quite a few number of years, and that was help spread the word on bass fishing. So
it really sounds like you guys were on the precipice of the need for fishing information and how that just exploded and took incredibly, what's the word I'm looking for? Just it went across the country as like a wildfire does on a grass. It just went nuts.
There's no question. That was it. And we were right place, right time with the right message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there was, it was fate, you want to call it whatever it is. You were in the right place at the right time with the right message, and you were smart enough to run with it when you seen it.
Sure.
Yeah, you would see the door open, and let's go with this. Let's go in that direction. And making some of those calls, there was the story behind the story. There's ups and downs that you had. Cash flows. How am I going to make the next payroll? All these things that everybody looks, and they look at In-Fisherman magazine today as an example and say, "Oh wow, I wish I could work there."
Right.
Well, and now you do.
Yes.
But to get, what is it, 50 years now?
50 years.
That 50 years didn't come with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears by an awful lot of people.
I know.
In a lot of situations, in a lot of cases, that have committed their life in many different levels to get it to where it is today.
And that very statement, Al, is and I've been planning this podcast series talking about this. That is the goal of what we're sitting down talking about, and I want to get with as many of those original players as possible and get their perspective, their story, because you're right, there's a very important thing that happened when that first mailer went out, and it changed the game regionally, nationally, probably worldwide. And
exactly.
I think that story is very important for us as we're transitioning. Your generation, the founders, the OG, the old guard, if you will, they're retiring, some are passing away. That story has to be told before it's too late.
I agree.
And we want to make sure that the incoming youth, they're well aware of where things came from. And I'm grandstanding now, and I apologize for that. But it really is important to tell this story in its entirety. And as a guy that started in magazines, I've been fascinated by what happened in those early days. And the question I've always wanted to ask you is, what was it like getting a magazine laid out and sent to a printer in those early days?
Well, you had a staff that helped you. Neither Ron nor I could write.
Yeah.
I got a difficult time talking. I just barely squeaked it out of high school, man. All I did was want to fish.
Yeah.
So, but I could talk about fishing. That's my life. That's what I do. But we assembled a staff of people. We learned really on early in this to get the best people you can get and let them do their deal. Get the people that are better than you are at what you do. Mm-hmm. A business model that you'll never go wrong with. It sounds dumb. Get people that are more skilled and better than you are. Give them parameters and let them run with it. Learn that at a really early age. Mm-hmm. I'm not an accountant. I needed a bean counter. Ron was not a CEO. He needed somebody that knew how to run a business and manage a CEO. He was creative and know what your skill levels are, put it together, assemble a team of like-minded people, and go for it. And when you assemble a team of like-minded people, gifted people that love what they're doing, that passion is so. I've said this many times, and I do mean it when I say it. I would not hire a person that didn't like to fish or love to fish. I would not hire one in a management position. Because they would not be capable of understanding the things in the vision that we're seeing. And I mean that.
That unfortunately in today's outdoor industry, that's a rare thing now.
I know that.
And it's complicated. And I do appreciate the folks that especially at this company, Mike Carney is ate up with hunting and fishing.
Yeah.
He's our CEO. Yeah. And I like that gives me faith in the system.
Yeah.
Right. So that you can continue to move forward. You do have to have a passion. One of the things that I've learned over near 20 years of being in this business is it is a different business. It's not when I say hunting and fishing is different than maybe tire sales or software development or you pick anything. It's different. What makes it different? And I feel like that answer is it's largely the amount of passion that people have producing whatever the product is. If it's the manufacturing lures, if it's photos, video, whatever the case may be, you can't compare the outdoor space to anything else because that's the big difference. And it's not that people aren't passionate about their jobs selling tires.
Right.
You absolutely have to. I don't want to take that away, but there's something about sharing your passion and trying to educate people to become better at their passion that comes with a level of obligation of authenticity.
Yeah. And you see it. You know it when you see it. Mm-hmm. It's real. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely real. And committing your life to a particular thing, like we have the fishing industry. I don't hunt, I don't shoot archery, I fish. That's all I do. And I still love it. It's that fire in the belly when you see something different. It is for a number of years when we were developed, this business was growing like wildfire. I mean, there was so much new stuff coming out so fast. It was just incredible. Now we kind of, that's still happening, but it's not happening at that intensity that we've seen. We kind of plateaued a little bit. But social media and forward-facing sonar has taken this whole sport, both combined, and taken it now to another level. Mm-hmm. We're at another level. We're just kind of chugging along. They're doing okay. You get a nugget of a breakthrough information here, a nugget here. Now all of a sudden, the door open. We're looking through a different set of eyes again, and you're seeing things that you didn't see before. And all of a sudden, that fire in the belly that was kind of starting to simmer after a while, all of a sudden it lights up again. Yeah. Holy mackerel, this is going to be fun. I want to be involved in this. This is moving. You're moving a needle. That level of excitement to see something new, you hear from some people that say, "Oh man, I'll use ice fishing as an example. Ice fishing is the best example that I can give because 3 days ago in our office at Angling Edge, they're doing an ice show. Mm-hmm. We do this ice thing. And they have all the latest and greatest ice fishing electronics in there. And I come back and they're assembling all this new stuff. And I mean, and I just think to myself, ice fishing, not that many years. Look at how far that ice fishing market has moved to what we're using today, to what we were using not that many years ago. Just this one little segment of the sport is so advanced for what was there. And it was like a light bulb went off to me. The way they're hooking everything up to do everything. And it's just, wow, where the sport just keeps moving and moving and moving.
I'm continually amazed at what's next. I think there's been numbers of time. I bet you could give me countless examples of how are they going to do better, right? I think we've reached the apex of technological advancement. And then the next year it's like, wow, didn't see that coming.
I didn't see that coming.
So like you said earlier, somebody's got the next best thing on their desk right now.
They're doing it right now. It's there.
Yeah.
It's there.
Ice fishing is a great example. I think that's probably one of the best illustrations of how quickly the sport evolved. And again, we've said this before, the beautiful thing is you can still go out and do it to whatever level fulfills you.
Whatever level you can that fits your financial and your how far do you want to go with it?
That's
you
right.
could still get a great experience on the water. Mm-hmm. Whether you're wading, whether you're shore fishing, whether you're in a kayak, fishing off of a pontoon, or you got a boat with a 300-horse Verado on the back of it like I got, and every bell and whistle you could put in the boat is on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, but on the boat topic, I think we briefly touched on this last time. I'll never, in fact, I applaud anglers that make the most out of the boat they have. I'll never judge another man's boat.
No,
because
I agree with you.
I've had some, like I told you, my first boat had a tree growing out of it when I bought it.
I love that. I love it.
And we made it work. And now I've got a new Skeeter in my driveway, and it needs to be rigged, and I'm happy with that. But when I see somebody, even a younger kid, here's an example. Our Thursday night bass league that's here in Brainerd. There's a couple of young kids. I don't know who they are. I would love to even have them in here to get their input on things. They're like junior high to early high school. And they've got this little 14-foot boat that has like a 5-horse motor on it. They've got an old trolling motor. It's not like you look at that and you're like, I hope they win. Even as a guy that's put my money in, like I would love to see those kids pulling off, because I remember in my day when doing well out of a situation like that, what that meant. But all of us, I think everybody in that league is wanting those kids to win.
You know what? As you just said this, it just flashed through my mind. I just seen Dan Quinn with Rapala and Brandon Caesar doing this. That's what they did.
That is what they did.
The guys were looking in. They were young punk kids with a tiny boat fishing local lakes.
Making everybody cry, too.
I mean, as you just said that, I could see these two kids. Now they're in the industry to some degree. And Dan in a big degree with Rapala. But as you just said that it was like a flashback in time, just seeing them in the world that I live in, and there's others, there's many others, but those two, because of the age and what they have done and how good they are at what they do, it just looked like a pop-up, man.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. They're both good friends of mine, and we've had Brandon in here we do a segment called After Hours, where we kind of rant and rave and
good stuff.
Yeah, it's a good conversation, and if I need any type of on the water advice, or if we're trying to learn something new, there's a good chance that Brandon has already used it, or Dan the same way. Like, those guys they're junkies, and they're still junkies today. And so I appreciate the fact that the fire in your belly, that's something that keeps us going. And you go through ups and downs and plateaus, and that's a part of life. But that fire in the belly that drives passion, I think, is what In-Fisherman wanted to spread. They wanted to encourage that and get people on the water to become the best that they were. It did for me at a young age. But when you were talking about, there was a time when everything just exploded. Like on the front of the building today, it says the In-Fisherman Communication Network. So there's several departments or arms, if you will. And granted, that was probably created as a necessity because of the demand you were getting from your readership, right?
At that point, In-Fisherman Communications Network was the largest multimedia network in the fishing industry, period. You had television, radio. But I forget, we were playing on 600 stations 6 days a week on a radio. You were doing television shows, varieties of different kinds of magazines.
The books.
The books coming out. And I remember the DVD craze, the rental DVDs when you'd go. We were renting them all over the place. People were renting these shows to look at it. Again, everybody was starved for information. It was just anywhere you could see it. And those that had that fire in the belly couldn't get enough of it, and you just more, give me more. Yeah, and you see the end, and I still see it today. That I had lunch just before I came here, but to touch base with you to an old friend of mine. My name is Gary Roach. Gary's a legend here, particularly in the walleye world. He's 89 years old. What did we talk about at lunch today after he came back from the doctor's office? About getting together this spring and going to fish for whitefish, open water, up on a cross lake chain, and because we've both been doing that for kicks for something a little bit different. And you should see his eyes, like he's older than I am, okay? His eyes lit up. He says in the last few years, he says this is his favorite fishing experience. And he was like a kid in a candy factory. My friend Gary McAnally, who I work with, he was there with us. We went back to 25 years in a row that we would go chase lake trout up in Canada. In fact, Doug used to go with us on many of these Canadian lake trout trips. They were some of the most memorable trips. And we spent every New Year's Eve for 25 years in Canada. It started with 8 of us. Every New Year's Eve, because of the lake trout openers the next day. And every one of us that you talked to, those were some of the most memorable ice fishing experiences we ever had. You're still talking about them.
Yeah.
That's what fishing is about. That's what the excitement is. That's what grooms and creates you, me, people like us. And it's part of your life 24/7. And there is no better way to live, man. There is an excitement that it might fade a little bit, but then it comes right back. There's something that trips your trigger.
Yes.
And it don't ever go away.
It doesn't.
It keeps you young, too, by the way.
Yeah, noted. I would say that there was friends of mine. There were numbers of friends of mine that I guess they're like, man, I don't think you need to make a career out of fishing. It'll ruin your passion.
What?
Well, that's what they were. They're like, I wouldn't want to make it my job because I think that would ruin my passion. Well, I considered that before I was working in a sheet metal shop and making gutters, and I was doing stuff that was helping me pay the bills for my family early in those days. But I always wanted to work in the business. Well, I couldn't believe they were saying that. I'm like, is that true? So I considered it, because if I was going to make the jump, or if I was going to work on writing or filming or whatever it was, I wanted to make sure that wasn't a risk of mine. And the opposites happened, Al. Like I think I've started my 20th year in the business, and I have, if it's done anything, it's made me more crazy on some of those levels, it's done nothing but augment my passion, because there are days here working at In-Fisherman and some of the other publications we produce at OSG where I don't have the opportunity to sit down and write as much as I used to. Mm-hmm. And last night that's a long story, but I was up till 1 a.m. last night cranking a feature out, a turkey hunting story no less, for Game and Fish. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, it took me back to the early days of doing what I was doing. And it was very fulfilling to click send, not to get that work off my desk, but because I put another piece of content together that I hope somebody will find valuable. I find fulfillment in if I've entertained somebody with my mistakes, and I'm happy to share my mistakes. I've made a lot of silly moves in my life. So those find their way into those stories. But at the very least, if someone can take that piece of information, take it to use it out in the woods, get their first turkey, or watch their children shoot their first bird, I may never hear about it, but the thought that maybe I had a part in that is what I find value in.
For me, it is still satisfying, the same way that satisfied you, to have somebody come up to you. You're at a restaurant, or somebody will come up to you with a young man with them and ask, can you do a selfie with them? And that kid, you could see the fire in the belly. He is so excited. He watches the shows. He reads the fishing magazine. He's us at a younger age. You could see it's there. Mm-hmm. It's real. And you're there with their parents, and you see that young person. And to me, that is hugely satisfying, to know that I made a difference in somebody else's life, yes. and have been fortunate enough to create jobs that give people the opportunity to fulfill their dreams, to have been a part of influencing that. To me, that gives me great satisfaction. It gives me a reason for being, not from a selfish, not an egotistical point of view, just a great deal of satisfaction of a job well done.
Yeah.
You did your job, and you did it with excellence, and this young man here is living proof, and that keeps me motivated.
Yeah, legacy is important, and I really I hope that down the road I've had an impact too. But let's back up a little bit to the days of this building that we're in. So you guys had an office, you had a facility established where you were kicking out early days of In-Fisherman magazine. Talk a little bit about the discussions or the timeline where you're like, we need a bigger space, we need more offices. How did that transpire?
Well, it's just the way you said. We needed more space and we needed more offices, and we had to be more organized in what we were doing. We were at a point where my brother Ron came in and sat down with me, and he says, Al, we need you to step out of your position. You're not a chief financial person. I was handling the money with a lady named Marge Brettingen. I was helping to pay the bills, and can you imagine? Like I said, I barely got out of high school, yeah. And I'm controlling all of this money with a woman that is a bookkeeper, not what you would call a chief financial genius at that point. He says, we got to get people in here that are way better than what you're at and better than me. We need to get somebody that knows how to. We're at a point that this business needs a skill level that you and I don't have anymore. Mm-hmm. And besides, we got to do what we do best. You, Al, go talk about fishing, get on camera, smile, and say something to people. Love it. You're good at that. Ron, you are good at dreaming and seeing things that need to be next and formulating them. I'm good at that. We need people that know how to run a business. Mm-hmm. Thus, we got our growth years here at In-Fisherman. A longtime friend of mine, he's still alive. His name is Stu Lagarde. And Stu was the CEO that took In-Fisherman to a total different level. Gary McAnally, who a great friend of mine, like I said, I had lunch with him today. He's our COO. Dan Sura, Doug Stange, brilliant, one of the best editors in the sport major industry I have ever seen in my life. I still read his editorial pieces when they come out. Then I look, there's still magic there. There's still magic after all.
Could you imagine how many words that man's written in his career?
Well, you talk about fire in the belly.
Yeah.
This business is his life, 24/7, like it is ours. Yeah, when you look back at those people at the skill level, we assembled a management team that was working with the editorial department, the TV department, the print department, the radio department, the tournament department. Mark Dorn and Jim Kelkofen headed up. We had all these different entities, and each one needed a particular group of people to oversee and function. Every one of them was a pot of money that needed to generate, and some of them complemented the other ones. But you needed somebody that can organize all this stuff. Ron and I we were chasing rabbits. We seen it, and we would go after this stuff. Yeah. I got to tell you a funny story. I don't know why this just popped into my head, chasing rabbits. But my wife, at about this time in our life, a little bit later, she gave me a big picture of Garfield. And Garfield's got his foot on a mouse, another one here, a foot in both his hands holding a mice, and he's looking cross-eyed at a mouse running across the floor. And she looked at me and she says, "That's you."
That's you.
And I'll never forget that. She says, you got to back off a little bit and smell the roses a little bit. You can't keep doing it all. And I've still got that. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, squirrel. I mean,
but so those were the explosive years. There was a 15-year window of the 25 years that I was fortunate enough to be a part of In-Fisherman, that part of my life that was there. There was a 15-year period where it went so fast. And the interesting thing is anything that we touched during that 15-year period turned to gold. And it was all because of people. It was all because of the right people that had a passion at the right time. In every single one of these divisions that I'm talking about, you had a passionate leadership in there that eat, sleep, and drank this thing. And collectively, people that had the wisdom to know how to gather and make use and feed everybody's skills to be able to keep them motivated, driven. And for 15 years, and there was a time, and I'll get to that. There was a point in my life after we're pushing 20-something years in here, I had an opportunity to sell In-Fisherman. We did. And what had happened, I had most people don't know this, that at that point in my life, my wife had just went through with a bout of breast cancer. And it was the first time that I realized, I could lose her. I was so obsessed with my work. It was my work. That's what I did. And I had to sit down. I was realizing I'm at a point in my life where I realized, man, I need to spend more time with her. And she shared it with me after. She says, I need you more in the wintertime. I need you more now than ever I did. You got to give me, now it's our time. So I had to make this decision. And then we had an opportunity, a company from New York contacted us. And I'll never forget that initial phone call. They were he introduced himself, and he said, I'm with such and such a company in New York, and we're interested in acquiring outdoor hunting and fishing magazines. And we've been looking at you, seeing what you guys are doing, just wondering if you would be ever interested in talking about this. Now, naturally, it'd be stupid to say, nah, I ain't got time to do it. So I set up a meeting with him. And our first meeting was a coffee shop in the Minneapolis airport. He's flying out of New York to L.A. to go to do business. I'm driving out of Brainerd to do a Des Moines sports show. We meet at the airport in a coffee shop. And we sat there for about an hour, exchanged chit-chat, who they are, who we are. They answered a few things. And then for the next year, then there was a little question asked here, and I'd go grab a sheet of paper and answer that question. Then this went on for about a year. And then one day I get a registered letter in the mail. And basically, in a nutshell, what it says, if we came and did our due diligence and everything proves to be what you guys said it is and got in front of us, we'd be willing to give you X amount of money for In-Fisherman Communications Network. Mm-hmm. Now, a kid growing up on the streets of Chicago, I had to look at my fingers. That was a lot of money. There was a lot of O's in that baby. I said, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. Big deal. Mm-hmm. And again, I went and I talked to my brother and my sister-in-law and my wife, Mary. And, and I says, what do you guys think on this? And Ron was 10 years my senior. So and I shared my issues with my Mary at that point in time with her health issues. And all three of them said to me, and make the call. You make the call, Al. They're going to put the golden handcuffs on you. Do you want to live that way for a period of time and do what you have to do? You make the call. We're making a bunch of money. We're satisfied. Life is good. Everybody's happy. We don't care. You make the call. And I counted the cost with everything, where I was at that time in my life, where Ron was at, 10 years older than I am. And so we opted to sell In-Fisherman at that point in time. And I had they gave me you have a 4-year non-compete.
Of course.
Which is typical in any sale of a business like that. And so I had a 2-year work contract. They gave me a 2-year work contract, and my job was really simple, to help reorganize the management structure and create a reporting system from Brainerd to New York, and particularly the financial end of things. Mm-hmm. And that was part of my job, to oversee that and make sure and get it organized. And the other part of it was to continue to do television and X amount of video production pieces, because that segment of the business is so big. So I did that for 2 years. Then they came back and said, they renew a year. They said, we need you 1 more year, but now just do television and give us some DVD rental pieces, knock off as many, but just do the television shows. So I did that. And then I had 1 year that I kind of floated around after that. So that period of time, like I said, that encompassed 25 years of my life. And it was phenomenal. I'll never forget it. It molded and shaped me. So many good friends, so many good people. And like we had talked earlier, the sport fishing industry, it's a tremendous group of people. Mm-hmm. They're different than, I'm sure the hunter, I don't hunt, so I don't know that, but I know people that hunt, and they all seem pretty similar to what fishermen are. Yeah, that passion is there, that love for what you do, and you see it in all of the television program that is available today. You see it in the fishing shows, everything. It's a great industry for those of us that really, really love it. There is still opportunity for young people to make. There may be more opportunity today with these high school fishing teams. Yeah. There is no question in my mind that at that high school level, at the high school level in particular, and you see your son is involved in it, in that. A lot of these young people right now have no idea that they're the next leaders in this sport. They don't even know it, but that's where most of them that are going to come into this industry, that are going to be outdoor communicators like you and I are tackle manufacturers, boat manufacturers, reps manufacturers, involved in the tourism industry, and they are the next generation. They're being groomed right now, and some of them, you see it, they're going to be in this. For their dad, we're handing the ball off. What we're doing here is giving them history, so they have a better understanding of everything. And you're taking the ball and you're slowly handing it off to them, and they're coming. And there'll be a day we can sit and look at it, and we'll look at each other and say, we did a good job.
We did
with
a good
that
job.
One.
Well, and to that point, I feel like, I think you and I'd agree, if I had high school fishing, I'd have got better grades in high school. I would have been maybe went to college, but they've had more opportunity to be on the water in a an organized fashion than I ever dreamed was possible. And I know I fished my very first bass tournament as a junior in high school on some little impoundment in Iowa. It was a paper tournament, where every team cheated. It was one of those things. But I really enjoyed that. But I was a junior in high school. My son is a junior now, and Al, I think he's fished over 100 derbies already.
Isn't that something that is? I know where I would be if I was there.
Yeah.
That's what I'd be up to my eyeballs.
Yep.
And to be able to do what these young people are able to do and fish with the caliber of fishermen that they get to fish with.
Yes.
On these lakes, to be exposed to so much knowledge so fast. The word, and the earlier days of television, everything, or even television, everything was done a year before, usually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
And print, a lot of stuff was done seasonally. You'd fit the quarter. Everything took work in advance. Now everything's it's instant.
Mm-hmm.
It's instant. You grab your phone and you need information. It's there. Yeah. I got to admit, I'm old school. I'm old school as can get. I love print. I still love a magazine. Yeah. I love a newspaper. I love it. And a magazine, I get pop open a magazine. I can't wait to get In-Fisherman. In my opinion, I was, part of finding this thing. It is still the best outdoor multi-species freshwater fishing magazine in the entire business. Bass is separate. It isn't in the same category. You take those two, you throw in a couple other tabloid-type publications, and these are the best in the business editorially.
Well, what I have hope for this incoming generation and perhaps a reversion back to print. I feel like, and I'm sure you remember these days where these entities, likely the type of companies that bought In-Fisherman back in the day, that said, well, we don't know that print's going to be around. We really need to shift to digital. And that's definitely a transition that had to happen. But that didn't mean that print was going to be dead. And I feel like, as interesting as it may be, the outdoor space, print is still a very viable method of communication. It's a viable method of advertisement, and in the outdoor sportsman group world, it's still like the foundation of our business model. So print still has a place, but I believe, Al, I'm old school too, but I think humans want something tangible and artistic that they can look at. It's visually appealing, and even though that we're so far down the road in the fishing business where it's almost already been talked about, there are still new things being discussed in In-Fisherman today. We just sent out the 50th edition of the 50th anniversary edition of In-Fisherman. I don't even know how many publications deep that would be, but there's parts of that magazine that haven't been written about before. Mm-hmm. There are things, still new cutting edge things.
I read them in every issue I see it.
Yep.
I can see something.
So I've noticed that my daughter really prefers to read a book. She doesn't like reading a book on a Kindle or a phone. Mm-hmm. My son picks up a magazine and they find it. You see that kayak magazine on the table right there? That's my daughter on the cover. And it's still important to her generation.
Ta-da!
They still think that's cool. So
By the way, you did good.
Well, thank you. You can thank my wife for the better parts. But see, that still means something to that generation. So I believe that the value of print is still going to come back, or is going to stay strong or get stronger.
Get strong. I believe that too. I do. Mm-hmm. I do.
So
there is some. I just read something. If you follow my career, other than fishing, my faith is an integral part of my life.
Yes.
And I close our show with something related to Scripture that's important to me and what God did in my life, and that's what I do on television. The end of it, and I did a closing that I had heard from actually some people at full-time ministry after it had made me aware of that. I was talking about the Bible, and how referencing the Bible can teach you a lot of stuff in life. And they got back to me, more than one did, full-time ministry, said that there's statistics as far as reading the Bible, having a piece of printed word when you're in a church, having a Bible and not on a phone or a tablet, the retention span was something like 8 times when you had the printed word in your hand and not on a phone or even a tab. 8 times more. you retained what you've seen and read. That's a staggering thing when I don't know if those numbers are true or not.
That makes sense.
But I heard it from a number of people that made me aware of that, and it does make sense.
Do you think it's the intention? That your intentions are more focused?
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
Well, and interestingly, this is another true and interesting rabbit trail we could go down. Is I've always been. I grew up in a very faith-based family as well, and my brothers and sister are in the ministry still today. I'm the black sheep, but I love Jesus. I got a lot more work that needs to be done yet. But I feel like there's a correlation that I'm sort of proud of that Jesus picked disciples who were largely fishermen.
Love it. I love it.
Yep.
I love it. And it is no coincidence.
Yeah, and we're a hot mess.
I got nothing against you golfers, but he didn't hang around with golfers.
I think that there's a connection to nature that we have that's undeniable, and it's collective across our group. And the hunters are the same way.
Yeah,
we have a passion for conservation. We have a passion for sharing these experiences. Because let's be honest, if you were to take the sharing the experience out of fishing altogether, I think there'd still be an element of I got to keep doing it. I love it, but really, what makes fishing wonderful? To me, it's when you're home, or you're loading your boat up with your son, or launching, whatever it is. It's the people that you're able to share that with that takes that experience and just makes it all the better.
I agree 100%. It makes life worth living.
It does. I want to go back on something here that this is a question I've always wanted to ask you. And when I first got involved in consuming In-Fisherman media, I was in 4th, 5th grade. So it was quite a few years ago. And I followed it as best you could in those days, on the timeline of the 90s and early 2000s, whereas now, you can get immediate information on your computer and the internet, so you can be kept up to date better. But, I was consuming the television show. I had the magazine subscription. And then I noticed something had changed. I knew that you and your brother and perhaps some other people in the mix were no longer a part of the In-Fisherman TV or the visual experience. I knew something had changed, and I wasn't quite sure what to make of it then. Knowing what I know now, it all makes sense with what I experienced. But when you were considering making the sale, you had an important factor at home, your wife and her health, and that was probably the baseline to consider this. But was there how many nights did you lose sleep, or was there a level of hesitation, like you'd put your whole heart and soul into this organization, and was there a point you're like, I don't know that I should do this, but I need to do this? Or what was that like for you when you made the decision to pass it on?
It was a bit agonizing for a while to get to where should I or shouldn't I? In between prayer and constantly thinking about the future, looking at where we're at, the age of my brother. At this point, I said a number of times, it's time to take some chips off the table. You've been in all your life. It's time to take a little bit off. You're at a point in your life, and all of those things came into my mind. And especially when they said, "You make the choice, Al." Yeah,
that's heavy.
And I had to think, could I live in a corporate environment and still be myself and function what I believe in and what I stand for? Can I still do this? And when we made the decision, and I said yes, I said we're going to sell. And I remember sitting in with Ron and the attorneys and everything when we signed the final sheets of paper to make everything legal out of there. And all of that was done. And when I walked out of that door after that, I knew that I no longer have any control of this thing. I signed it, and I'm not going to look. I'm not going to Monday morning quarterback this. I made a decision. I counted the cost. It is no longer my baby. It is their baby to make happen. And that was it. When I walked and closed that door, I had no problem when I leave it. I had a peace with it.
So there was a relief that came with that moment?
Yes, absolutely. But there was a lot of agonizing nights leading up to it. A lot. One day you're gonna, and one day you're not gonna. Yeah, one day you're gonna, and it was a very stressful period of time. And anybody that's ever been in a position like that understands you're dealing with your life, the lives of other people. All of these things.
The legacy of the brand.
The legacy of the brand. Yeah, and I was fortunate enough, but we were blessed financially, but that was never what drove. I was never motivated by that. That was not the motivating force. The motivating force was to put out a phenomenal product, you can get behind, and that still is the motivating force.
It is, and I know that with the staff we have here today, Rob Newman and Doug, of course,
Yes.
and Jim Nagy, and then Todd Seisner, our publisher, we want to find a way to embrace the next 50 years. We want to see it live on. And I don't know that I'm going to be here for 25 years. I don't know that any of us will continue to be here in 5 years or whatever the case may be, but it does matter to each one of us that's involved currently that the legacy does live on, and that the legacy, as we talked about a little bit ago, hopefully there are some of these younger anglers and younger young adults that are developing a passion or a skill to work in the business, that we can make a clean handoff and be happy with that. But you made a point that I think is very important, that In-Fisherman is bigger than us, and we have to let it go when the time comes. And the personal investment that we have, which gets me out of bed in the morning. It makes us do this podcast and talk about what we hope based on what we know and what we've learned. You still have to come to a point where you got to be at peace of walking away from it.
Right.
And hopefully you've done a good job putting it in the next set of hands.
Absolutely. Agree 100%.
There's a lot of things. I mean, Al, I could ask you questions until the cows come home. I want to know, When you walked out of the building, like, I want you to elaborate on that for the last time. When you walked away from this, knowing that you had a multiple-year non-compete, I know that you were going to go fishing. I know that, and of course, looking at what you guys are doing now with Lindner's Angling Edge and the wonderful people you have over there too, your wheels didn't stop spinning when In-Fisherman became someone else's entity. So, did you take a year and just fish? When did the wheels start turning again?
Well, that last year, if I fished a lot, yeah, I did. Yeah, and like you shared a little bit about the last year when I was searching. I got to go back a little bit.
Yes.
I'll go back to the December, let's say it's May of this year. We sold In-Fisherman Communications Network on a May 8th. Was it May 8th? The December before, I'm 4 years off, 3 years off of my 4 years off of my non-compete. It's starting to wrap up. This is December. May would be the fourth year. It would be ending that May 8th. I'm having coffee with my wife in cold Minnesota. And they were just talking back and forth, and she says to me, she says, your non-compete is right around the corner. Yeah, she's, you're giving any thought to what you want to do with the rest of your life? We're financially secure. You don't have to work any again. You want to go fish tournaments. You want to go do whatever you want to do. Have you given any thought to it? Yeah, and I just nonchalantly said to her, I like doing television. And she's cleaning up everything. She's kind of looked at me and she says, well, maybe you ought to keep doing it. End of conversation. Yeah, Now, that's December. That February, I'm running on my running machine at home. Yeah, and I've been praying about this for a long time now. And it's like I just got a gut feeling, and as a Christian, I believe the Spirit of God just kind of touched me with this thing. And he said, go back into television and close the show with something from my word, the Bible, and how it's impacted your life. And it was, it wasn't audio. I didn't hear it out of a cloud, but it was like like it was a piece in my gut. That like it was real. It was real to me, I can tell you. However you interpret that, it was real to me. I got on a plane. If I talked to my wife, she said, let's go down. We got to talk to Ron and Dolores. I went down to Florida, and he loves all his winters were in Florida. He loved it down there. I says, this is what I like. I could go do television and close it with scripture and thing. And they said, we're all in. And my sister-in-law just looked at me and she says, here we go again.
Yeah, but you had stepped in a lot of cow pies on the way that you knew how to avoid those, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I mean, you learned. But I mean, you still had to. You had a lot of time left. You wanted to make sure you filled your time doing the right thing and continuing to educate the masses on catching fish. And you guys have done a wonderful job of that. And I want to, it's another podcast, but I would love to have the conversation about the early days of Lindner's Angling Edge and how you learned from your time in Fisherman to make that business.
Okay.
And so we'll get into that. But the kind of nearing the end of our conversation here, the corporate competition side of things can often be a strange mess to wade through.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing something here that I don't think has really been done very often in our business, where you sell an entity, that entity becomes somebody else's, and it's sold multiple times since those days.
Yeah.
And on paper, we're competitors in a space. We're competing for eyeballs, maybe ad dollars, whatever that is. I don't care about any of that because the legacy supersedes all of that, and the story needs to be told within that. So what was your vision of the future of In-Fisherman after you're done with it? I know that you wanted it to do well, but things changed. It was different for a while. Talk a little bit about your perception of that as these different entities took the helms and different people in and out and things like that.
You mean where we're at today?
Where we're at today.
This point today?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's no question that the fishing industry and all of your partners want to see more social media.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they want. And the different levels of participating in the social element, you all got to give them more.
Mm-hmm.
You got to give them more. The cost of television, for those that are not aware of this, it's an expensive game to play. To produce a show, direct a show, take it to market, to buy time and everything, costs a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the consolidation in the sport fishing industry that we've seen from 30, 40 years ago, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, where bigger companies are buying up other companies, and now we see a bigger frenzy than ever before this is happening. Mm-hmm. And every time that comes together, the advertising dollars shrink.
Yes.
Yeah, the money changes, and you have to follow the trends. That I don't believe television is ever going to go away, and I don't believe print is ever going to go away. There's an avid group of people that want to consume that their passion that way. Mm-hmm. And I understand that there's a group of people, the younger generation, that gets a lot of their stuff on a cell phone. I understand. I don't like it. I got a hard time consuming it that way, but that's another world. It's real.
Yeah.
It is real. And I realize you have to service that. Now, where this whole industry goes right now, it's fragmented to a large extent. There are so many ways to put out media, to put out content. There's so many different vehicles, and a lot of it gets diluted from the really good stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's my concern. How do you get into this ocean of stuff and produce good content that brings you out of the mass of some of the social media?
What sets you apart?
How do you get yourself to be set apart and convey that to your advertising partners at different times? Because some partners, those that have the money, usually are big ticket items, still will buy television in their boat, motor, depth finders, electronics, high ticket items. They still appreciate television. They still create a commercial to go with it. Now, smaller companies, smaller budgets and that, and a lot of times on a big television package, they can't afford that. They can't. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the price of getting to play and getting the time, it's getting tough. So where this is all going, I don't know. It is so fragmented right now. I'd like to see some kind of unifying thing that can get us back on track. And those, I got to use the word that put out good content, okay?
Yeah.
That really take pride in putting out good quality content got a place to go and distribute
Well,
it from.
2 points there. The quality content it's interesting. The expectation of quality on different mediums has changed, right?
Exactly.
So if you're watching YouTube, it's okay if it's crappy audio and using a phone. And
In
I
fact,
say
it's appreciated
okay.
to some groups.
It is.
Yeah.
That's right. But I feel like oftentimes, because that's so readily and easily available, it's easier to get your fix there as opposed to waiting for a better produced and more experienced television show, or even if it's a web show. Sometimes it's easy to just go to YouTube and get what I want right now.
Yeah.
I feel like we've lost a little bit of patience. And the other thing I wanted to point out is, the entity, I don't remember the name, that purchased In-Fisherman. Was it Intermedia or Prime Media?
Prime Media.
Prime Media.
Initially, we saw it was Prime Media.
Okay.
That was the first time.
And then it was Intermedia, and there may have been another one in
There
there.
was one more after that. Yeah.
Yep. And now there's Outdoor Sportsman Group. And Pure Fishing is an example. There's several other larger conglomerates that provide an umbrella.
Yeah.
And while that's kind of complicated things, it has saved some of those brands from becoming
Absolutely
non-existent. That's right.
You're right.
And so I guess if the way the business is going is to preserve some of these legacy brands through the umbrella of one company, so be it. Mm-hmm. And Outdoor Sportsman Group is a fine example of that a lot of these independent brands and magazines probably wouldn't be around today if it weren't for the sister relationship they have across the different titles.
Very true.
And so
Very true.
I don't know that that's the best example, but some of it has been very necessary.
Yeah.
And we have to, we want In-Fisherman legacy to last another 50 years, and right now that's the way our business is. If you could redirect that ship a little bit, and you kind of alluded to that, what are some changes you would make in the industry to, I guess best classify where these pieces of content should be, how they should be viewed, and how accessible they are? That's a faceted question. So what would you do to redirect the ship of the industry?
Right now, I don't know. Mm-hmm. There is so much going on. We're seeing a major shift in the competitive bass fishing world.
Yeah.
There's turmoil there like we've never seen before. And we don't know, there's another 2 years is going to tell you a lot there, but there's major shifting in the tournament end in particular, and people, the big companies are looking, how do we spend our money? Of the way some of the tournament organizations have went, it's difficult to put your money into one person in there because of the structure of it. You got new heroes coming in and out so fast. It's hard for a company to invest in an individual now because they might not be there 2 or 3 years down the line.
Right.
The way the media is delivering this stuff now, the way tournaments are going, that these names are changing like crazy. And there's a lot of younger guys coming in, and there's a handful of them that have the ability to do it. But these companies, how they're spending their money, even in that end, they're looking at the tournament bass world through a different set of eyes. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say this, and I don't care who hears it. I think our industry has spent too much money on a bass segment of the sport and totally disregard all the other fish that make up this industry, and I believe it is a huge mistake on their part for many of these manufacturers. They are wasting money that they could use. There is other fish that swim, like crappies, catfish, muskies, trout, walleyes, perch, bluegills, you name it.
That's right.
And wherever there is a species of fish that is plentiful, there is somebody that wants to know about it and will spend money to go there to catch that fish. And those of us that are in the media business, that's part of our job, is telling them where they can do that. And it isn't all bass tournament centered. Far from it. Far from it.
Amen. I couldn't agree more. I worked at Bassmaster for 5 years. I was in the thick of it. And I love bass fishing. I fish tournaments till I go blue in the face. Yeah. I'm fine with all that. But you know, I talked about this in the last time we sat down, is that there's something primal about getting back to a muddy bank and catching catfish. And, you know, I think that, I don't know how we redirect that. That's a tough one.
Yes, it is. Right now it is.
But I think that naturally people are going to get tired of the drama, perhaps, and maybe be like, you know what? I just want to go catch 5 to 6 inch bluegill today through the ice.
Just go fish.
I just want to go fish. And I feel like we're kind of trending that way. And it's not something that's super prevalent and in your face yet, but we are trending that way. But I think something that, if there was one lesson that any of these super duper big bass organizations and all of their supporting partners could understand or learn from, is that we have a tendency to really look inward first and see how we can self-serve before we can look at what's available and how we reach out to the people that want to consume the media that's produced. So as an example, there's only so much money endemically in the industry, and that hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't.
But you get it, as you said, it's fractured out, and you have we've got 3, maybe 4 top end bass touring.
The three majors.
Three majors. And the sad truth is they all can't survive long term.
No, can't do it.
There will eventually have to be some kind of merger, or one of them will go out of business, and
Going to happen.
It's going to happen. So, I mean, this is something I care an awful lot about too. But I don't know that. I mean, if I was to answer the same question I asked you, I think I'd say the same thing. I don't know yet. I don't know what needs to be done, but maybe a more outward focus on what everybody else likes to do also. And that's not to say Bassmaster go and start a catfish tournament. That's not what I'm saying.
No, far from that. Do what you do and be good at what you do. Yeah.
But acknowledge where you came from. Understand that the direction that you move forward not only impacts the people that you're appealing to, but it impacts the people that are creating that business or making that business roll forward. And know that I believe you're in the service business, that your job is to deliver content, to deliver an education and make it as good as possible. And the fire that's in your belly, the fire that's in my belly, it's not just Mexican food from last night. That is an undying passion to go fishing. And I really, really enjoy watching people enjoy what I enjoy. Yeah. It's the sharing the boat with people. It's watching my son and his fishing partner Jed get on a flurry of fish that put him in the top 10 of a high school tournament, and I didn't even have to cast a rod, and I got fulfillment from that. Mm-hmm. So if we could focus more on finding fulfillment in the little things, then maybe that's the answer. And that's a suggestion to everybody that owns big to small companies, tackle, media, whatever it is. Find the fulfillment in the small things that made fishing what it is.
Which is still the foundation, really.
Yeah.
It is still, when you add up and pile up the dollars and where they're going, that is the foundation of it.
This has been a good discussion, Al.
Yeah.
There's a lot of...
I've enjoyed it, and it's exciting to me to still... to talk to people like you that are in the business and are not I'm at an age where a lot of the people I'm hanging around with have taken their hat off and they hung it up on a mantle and said, "I'm going fishing." I get that. I don't want to get there. I don't want to quit fishing. I don't want to quit working. I love work, even though my work is my passion. I love work. I do this 6 days a week. I get up. There isn't a day that goes by in my life that I don't talk to somebody about fishing, read something about fishing, watch something about fishing. It's 24/7. That's a part of my everyday life, and it just excites me to find some new things like that. I don't ever want to lose that. When that happens, I know that it's not a good sign if I lose. When that goes, it's not going to be good.
Take me behind a barn and put me out of my misery. No, I agree with that, and I do want your infectious passion to be conveyed to our listenership, to anybody that has followed you throughout your career. And we still have more to talk about. And interestingly, guess what? We're at an hour and a half, which is exactly where we were at the last time we turned this off. So I think we're at a pretty good point, but there's more to this story, including Lindner's Angling Edge and just generally the people that we're going to have in here to continue to contribute to the In-Fisherman story, because there's a lot of things, and we briefly touched on it, but the PWT is a whole segment here that deserves, and I have pro angler friends of mine that are going to come in and help contribute to that. And I'd love to get Jim Calcafin on sometime to just kind of relive those days, because that's a thing. That
was 18 years, man.
Oh,
seed for your listeners here.
Yes.
Those 18 years formulated and took the walleye fishing world to where it is today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ready for a change again.
It is. And one of my mentors, a guy that I know that you think very highly of, Tommy Scarless,
yes,
told me all about that
Iowa
back in the day. Yeah, and he saved my career. He was a catalyst that made me. This is a long story, and I'm going to have a whole show about Tommy, but I don't tell my story without telling Tommy Scarless.
Interesting.
But
having known the man, very interesting.
Yes, yeah, we'll get down that road. There's a lot I'd love to say about him, but we'll get there. But anyway, I appreciate you making time. We're going to do this again. I know you're going to head south probably before this episode publishes. But what a cool story! What a cool ride! And we're going to get into some more down the road. But thank you for sitting down with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Hey, this is Thomas Allen. You're listening to In-Fisherman Storyline from Al. Thanks for being here. We'll catch you here on the next episode.